Alright, what is up everybody? Welcome, I am back with another video. This time we are in the game animation sample that I'm sure all of you already seen. Everybody seems to be playing around with this one, so I'm gonna do that as well. We're just gonna add basic stuff to it and see how far we get. We're gonna do it component based so that it's easy for you guys to implement into your own project if you want to do that. And we'll just see how far we get. And I've seen a lot of people asking about like attacks and stuff. I have that in a lot of my previous tutorials, but let's add some attack combos to this project, show you how that is done, and then we'll just keep adding stuff to it and see how far we get. Alright, so start by making a component. We're gonna right click and do actor component. I'm gonna call this a C combat. Then we want to get our character. I'm gonna add this AC combat to the character. We can open the component up, and the first thing we want to do is get a reference to our character, because that's good to have. So in this case, on begin play, we're gonna get owner, cast to character, and I promote it to a variable called owning character. And casting gets a lot of shit from a lot of people. In this case, it's fine because we're casting to a base class, so we're not creating any weird dependencies. The base class character is already in the engine and likely already in play, so it's already gonna be loaded into memory anyway, so it's not really a big deal. We're gonna set this one to replicate just because we might want to change this and set it on the server later. Right now it's on begin play, so as soon as the game starts, this variable will be set on all of the clients and so on. We could actually do an authority node here. Switch has authority. And this is still gonna work for single player as well, because you had authority in single player. So I'm gonna try to make everything work for both single player and multiplayer so that it's modular. Let's start by this. Then what we wanna do is go into our character. I'm not sure. I'm gonna put the input here just so we can test inside the component. Not sure it's the best place to actually put it, but let's do that for now. So if we print string here now, and if I left click, you can see I am attacking. Okay, perfect. So that's step one. Now what we want to do is want to play anim montage. You can do play anim montage like this, or you can get the mesh. No, actually, is it always this one since we're in a component? In this case, we need a reference to the skeletal mesh, which is why we have this owning character variable. So we're just gonna get the mesh. And all the clients and everything will agree what it is that is actually playing this montage. Then we need some attack montages. And I have some attack animations that I retargeted to the project. You can use whichever animations you want to. I don't have any free ones to share with you, and also I want to try to use actual proper animations, because in my previous tutorials I used some free ones and it just looks shit. So I want to actually use some good looking animations so that we can actually showcase it looking how it can look. So I'm not going to share these animations. I'm just going to share the project. So you do whichever animations you want. You can see it's just normal animations. So we're going to create anim montage. And now if I input this here, we should play this montage. But it's not using root motion. So let's enable root motion. Look at a little bit better. There we go. Alright, there we have attack number 1. Looks alright. Now let's work on the combo system. Now there's a couple of ways to do a combo system. We could probably use these outputs somehow. We can use notifiers to determine which should be the next one. I like to just using a normal integer to decide what attack we should use. So I'm just gonna make an integer. Call it combo counter. So after we attack, we're gonna increment the combo counter. We're gonna go to our attacks and we're gonna make montages of them all. I'm gonna use this one. So now we have 3 anim montages. We're gonna enable root motion on them. And that should be fine. And we need a way to use this now to determine what montage should be played. So we're gonna grab this and use a select node. Plug this one in here. So if it's 0, 1, 2, we can play different montages. So the first one will be this one. You can obviously use whichever ones you want. And let's see how that looks. There we have an attack combo. And if I keep clicking now, nothing happens. Because I already passed the combo count. So I keep increasing this, so it's above 2, which means there's no animation to play. So we need to reset it. So that means that if this is greater than the max amount, which is 2 in this case, we're gonna set the combo counter to 0. So when we play this animation, so when this is 2, we're gonna play this animation, increment it to 3, which means that it will be greater. No, actually, this should only be greater. Greater than 2, because it's 3, which means we're gonna go back to 0. See? And we can keep attacking. Perfect. We're also gonna do a sequence here. So in case this is not 2, we're gonna do a retriggerable delay. I know people don't like delays, but we could do a timer, but this is basically the same thing. I'm gonna do 1 second and reset it to 0. And the retriggerable delay in this case is not really an issue because it's not extremely gameplay dependent, and we're not waiting to do actual events, and we're not waiting to do something important. We're just gonna reset our combo counter. The bad thing with delays is if you wait for like crucial gameplay events, you do like 3 seconds delay and then explode, or I don't know, something. You see what I mean? In this case, we do this because we want to play an attack, And if we don't play the next one, we want to go back to playing the first attack in the combo. So if I play once, I wait a second, and attack again, we are back to playing the first montage. But if I do it in quick succession, this it works. Not an issue. Right, we have another issue here, is if I click quickly. Don't want to be able to do that. So is there a way for me to check? I usually do this with notifiers, so I'm just gonna find out if there's a way for me to see if I can actually check if we're already playing. Tosh. We can do this, I guess. Display montage is false. If it is false, we're gonna set it to true. And then on blend out, which means a little bit before the animation actually starts, stops, sorry, we're gonna set it to true, false again. There are some ways we can fine-tune this that didn't really look very well. Very good. I think it's a bit too slow, this one. So we need to be able to start the next attack. Because you see, if I attack here, this is kind of where we want to play the next attack montage instead of waiting all the way until like here. So let's not do that. Let's instead use my normal way to do this. I usually have a variable, something like this, can take action. Input enabled. If input enabled is true, we can do this. By default, this needs to be true. And we're gonna use notifiers to decide this. So I'm gonna create a new folder here. States. Notify states. Right click, blueprint class, all classes, anim notify state. Select. State. State input disabled. So what I can now do is that I can add this state to these animations. State input disabled. That means that during these frames of the animation, the input will be disabled. So somewhere around here, maybe there. And we need to add these to all our animations. something like that. Of course, we need to actually add logic to disable the input. So I'm gonna go into my folder here. I am gonna add a blueprint interface. I'm gonna call it BI character. Because we want this, actually no, it's for our component. So I'm gonna call it BI blueprint interface. BI combat components. I'm gonna add this interface to my component. And we are gonna add a call here. Yeah, you can call the function whatever. I like to prefix my interface call with calls with the prefix call. You can do whatever you want. This is my way to name it, but call set input state. Now call set input enabled. I'm gonna add a bool input here. Call it enabled. Then inside of our component, we're gonna do event call set input enabled. So we are using proper logic here now to get a reference to our component with interfaces to not create any unnecessary dependencies. We're now going to open our notify state, the input disable state, and we're going to override some functions. We're going to override the notify begin, and we're going to override the notify end. So on begin, this is triggered when we enter this input state. So begin here, and then the end will be triggered here. We're gonna get owner. And don't mix this up. We don't want to do the interface call here, because that would get a character, but we're looking for the actual component in this case. So we're gonna find component by tag, because if you do get component by class, you could do that as well and actually get the combat component. But this will create a hard reference in the input state to the combat component, which means that it will always be loaded into memory here as soon as this notify is active, which we might not always want. So instead, we're just going to find it by tag, actor component, and we're going to go combat tag. And in order to find this tag, we need to go into our character and get the combat component and do add a tag called combat. So this is a way for us to always get our component without actually loading it into memory. Now we can call set input enabled. And on the begin, it's going to be false, and on the end, yeah, this is the end, so it's going to be enabled, and on begin, it's going to be disabled. There we go. So now That should trigger this. Let's see what happens. This is me spamming, so you can see we're always playing the next attack. Alright. That's the basics of it. We do need more stuff than this. There's a couple of things that we need. A lot of games now use root motions for their attacks. It's very popular now, like because of Souls games and stuff like that, I guess. So that's the normal way of doing it, but what they also do is when you attack, you kind of want to be able to change direction slightly when you attack. Because right now I'm locked in the direction I'm facing when I start the attack. But we kind of want to be able to attack our combo in different directions. So in order to do that, we need to rotate our character in the input direction, in the direction we want to. And there's a couple of ways we could do that as normal. We're also gonna replicate this. Actually, let's replicate this first, I guess, just to make sure it's all working. Because everything here is right now running on the client. This input enabled is only necessary for the client. But we need some way to do that. So we're gonna create a function called, I don't know, advanced play montage. I'm gonna add an input for replicate. Actually, we can't use this inside of a function, I realized, because it's a latent node. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're gonna switch function. We're not gonna use this play montage. We're gonna get from our character instead. We're gonna do play anim montage. So that's a non-latent node, so we can actually put this inside of a function. So if replicate is false, we're just gonna play the montage we want. But if it's not, we need a way to actually play the montage in multiplayer. So we need 2 events here: custom event, server play montage, custom event multiplay montage. So the server, in order to, I know I repeated this in a lot of my other tutorials, but for the server to actually replicate this, the multicast broadcasts the animation montage to all connected clients, and the server, it needs, in order for the server to broadcast it, it needs to be passed on to the server. So we're gonna do anim montage as an input. And on the multicast, we're gonna do the same. So we can do this. Now there's a couple of things we want to do here. You could just send everything through straight away like this. And this means that the multicast is responsible for playing the animations for everyone, including the server and the client who actually made the attack input. That's not ideal in most games because of network lag and stuff. So we want to client and server predict it somehow so that the input feels smooth for the client. So we're gonna remove this branch, or we're gonna keep the branch, but the thing is, no matter if we want to replicate it or not, we still want to always play the animation montage instantly on the clients. So that's gonna happen first and foremost all the time. Then we're gonna get this replicate variable. And if that is true, we want to use our multi and server events. So if it's true, we're gonna switch has authority. Because I said the server needs to broadcast a multicast. So if we are on a client, which means we are not on the server, we need to pass it through to the server first. So in that case, we're gonna go to the server. But if we have authority, we are already on the server. So in that case, we don't need to do that. So in that case, we're gonna multi-play montage instantly. So we don't need to pass it on to the server in that case. So I'll do another input. Montage to play. Get the montage to play. Get the montage to play. And get the montage to play. Then we're gonna multi-play montage from the server. And there we go. That's fine. Now we need to do another thing as well. Actually, let's hold off on that. Let's just see if this works. Advanced play montage. We're gonna select replicate and we're gonna plug this in here now. Yeah, sorry, we need to our combo stuff. We can see it works. We're playing in standalone, so that's not hard to imagine. So we are now playing on the server. Okay, we can clearly see that the client is not playing the montage. It is for the server, so let's figure out why that is. Owning character is not valid. It is a replicated variable. Let me pause and figure out. Yeah, that's actually quite expected because we're plugging in this variable right here. Even though everything should be agreeing on what this is. But we're gonna do some slight changes. This is not ideal, I'm just gonna check if this works now. Yeah, you can see. So now they are all agreeing on what this character is. So now it works even if I have the plugin, even if I had the character reference of the actual multicast. So we don't need to pass the character variable through. That works nicely. So let's keep it like that. That's fine. And that means we don't need to actually push this one through. But there is one issue with this. Even though it looks like it's working, what's actually happening is this, as soon as the input happens, the player plays this animation montage. Then we're sending this to the server that sends it on to the multicast, and the multicast will then play it again. So for the original player, this is actually happening twice. So we need to exclude the original player somehow here. So we need to get owner, actually get owning character is locally controlled. We're only gonna do this if locally controlled is false. So that means that the player that actually executed this is excluded. Just see if that works. Yeah, there we go. So the player who did the input plays it locally instantly and is excluded from the multicast. And let's actually add another client. Let's see, with clients, 2 clients. Okay, you can see that it's not actually playing on the second character. Let's see what that is. Play and listen server. So now we have 3 players. Interesting. So maybe we actually should pass this variable through. Let's try if that works. Just gonna see if that works. Okay, so that was not the issue. And why is it returning true? Let me pause 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. Always something you forget. To multicast animation montages, generally you need to set the functions to reliable, because the engine likes to skip animations, because I believe, I'm not sure about this, I believe it's because most animations are cosmetic, and it thinks animations are cosmetic, but a lot of games use animations to actually drive the gameplay. In this case, we don't want to skip an attack animation. If you do an attack input, you always want that to actually play on all the clients, otherwise the game will look horrible. So we're gonna set it to reliable so that it always triggers, or is guaranteed to trigger. So that makes it so that it works. And you can see we're now calling on everyone. So that looks good. And in order to not play it on the original client, we're actually gonna do like this instead. We're gonna get a play controller reference and do play controller to exclude. And here we're gonna get player controller. It's a little bit different than how I usually do it, because I've done this in C++ a couple of times and that seems to work, but then I don't get the play controller like this. But the thing is, if you do this get player controller, the index 0 will always be your own player controller for clients and the listen server. So we are now on the multicast, which means that this will always be the local controller. So that means if the play controller to exclude is the same as the local controller, we're not gonna play the montage as the selected controller. So if that is false, we're gonna play. So we're gonna do play controller to exclude, pass it on. And in this advanced play montage, we're gonna do the same way, get player controller. So in this case here, we're getting the player controller off the actual client that made the input. And it should still work. I hoped so. We already had enough issues here. Yeah. There we go. So that should work. So there we go. 35 minutes already. Time flies when you're having fun. We're gonna keep adding this. So it'll probably be 1, 2, or 3 videos to actually properly set up an attack combo with proper replication and not just quick bad replication like most tutorials use, my own as well, because this is why people don't do tutorials properly, because it takes time to actually do stuff properly. Anyway, this will be part 1. We will add rotation in the next video and maybe something else. So yeah, I will see you in the next one. See ya!